Boom, bam. All right, my friend, we're live. What is up, Mr. Thomas LaMay?
What's happening?
Oh man, ready for another deep conversation. Is it? I got this down as our fifth. Is it our fifth or
Oh,
sixth? Who knows? Who knows? But we're here. We're almost halfway through the book.
have we eclipsed the halfway point?
No, I mean just on volume, just on size. This is what we've done. This is what's left. Um, but we've had some really freaking good conversations. I'm wondering, folks out there in the Omniverse, let us know where you're coming in from. And if this is your first collabo session, which kind of accounts for this one on the fifth discipline, but the first one, the original maiden voyage was the gold.
The goal.
Yep, yep. Uh,
I'm bringing the goal together today.
nice. Oh, look at
This
that. We
this
got
this
Mr.
links.
Lance. He says, "What's up, gents? What's happening, Lance? My brother up in California."
Lance. Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm. So before I hit live, you were saying that the stuff we're covering today is pretty some heavy fun
This one
stuff today.
hits. This one hits because well, I think we said this in the beginning when we started. It's just like the goal. You can't just pick up and kind of skim through it and read your favorite parts. The fifth discipline, it reads sequentially,
Right.
and it's kind of like algebra or calculus. So if you miss a chapter, like if you don't grasp a concept, the next concept you will be lost because they build upon themselves. And chapters 7 and 8 do that, and it's because they build upon itself. So chapter 7 is about like limiting factors and overcoming them, and then chapter 8 is like what once you've like designed a system and understand limiting factors, you can utilize those things and do a little Dr. Goldratt action and and overcome constraints by utilizing those constraints by utilizing the theory of constraints, and you can actually leverage those limiting factors. And what that does is it starts to be you start to become a master at things. And so, and on a personal level, that's called personal mastery. What Dr. Senge talks about, but many other people. There's so many people that kind of dive into that subject of mastery, and there's so many subjects that people talk about. Operational excellence is
Yep.
one. Lean is another one. There's
Yep.
so many more, and the it's like the realms are endless, right? And it cascades industries, right? So we can take these concepts and bring it into our industry, faux show. Bring it
Yeah.
into our industry because we deal in systems that are complex. We deal in systems sometimes chaotic. When you think about some of these issues that we face, especially accidents, safety things.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our systems that even a project that I'm working on never been done before. Not haven't been done before. Only like on a theoretical level. We are working with emergent technology. It's a scientific basically experiment. That's why it's so cool to be working. I wish I could tell
Oh
people
man.
what I work on, but I can't.
Right, right, right.
But it's such an emerging technology that like we every day we have to discover new like paths forward, and we have to have that mindset. Like you have to keep an open mind every single day. So like utilizing like what we did 5 years ago doesn't work. Like
It's
don't
not.
even come close.
So is it even like relevant? Are there some parallels to pull from, or just totally brand new?
Certainly some things are, like some
Right.
systems, like all things are like very similar. But some things are you can't treat them the same because
Yeah.
they don't interact the same and those kind of things. And I said this when we were talking about the goal. Like even if you were building the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, right? I don't know how many
Yes.
stories that thing is. I think it's 180. Maybe somebody in the audience can look it up while I'm rambling here. But that thing, if you look at the shape of it, it's different going up, right? It's not the same from floor to floor to floor to floor to floor. It's different going up. So if you're thinking about, oh, well, just this is a 200-story high rise and it's just rinse and repeat, like no, there's transfer floors, and even if you get up higher, it takes longer to hoist things. It takes longer. The air is different. The wind changes. The
Yeah.
weather,
Temperature.
right?
Yeah. Hell
Everything, right?
yeah.
So nothing is the same. It doesn't matter. Like there's nothing the same that we do. So having the mindset that's rinse and repeat, if you hear that from now on, if you hear that, you challenge it. And I
Mm.
want people to think about that. So if you're into systems thinking and you just catch a whiff of that, oh, this is totally baked, right? You hear that a
Yep.
lot, right?
Yep.
Or rinse and repeat, or soup to nuts, right? If you hear
Yep.
that, you're in for it. All right, start
That's a
challenging
signal.
it.
Like,
Look under
red alert.
rocks.
Red alert.
Yeah. Those are what we were talking about, like those biases, like early on. If you hear those things, start kicking over rocks, start looking in the back. Don't look at the cover sheet. Start flipping into the drawings and really getting into details because you're into trouble.
Yeah.
You
Those.
might not know it on the surface, but you're about to because that's that mindset of self-limiting behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you got? What do you think? What do you think
Just,
about that?
what it reminds me of is those kinds of statements. Like, we got it. It's baked. We've been here a million times. We've done this before. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I understand where it comes from. But I think the thing to recognize is there are a whole bunch of assumptions that we're making under that statement of we got it, rinse and repeat. Like, wait a minute. You're assuming that the conditions are going to stay the same. We're assuming, like, that statement assumes the conditions will not change, the people will not change, dynamics will not change. And there is no situation where that's true. So it's like, yes, red alert. If that thinking has infiltrated the team, the effort, wah, 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 you need to look. Somebody needs to say, oh, time out. I need to dive into this thing because we're about to get ourselves into trouble. So, yeah, totally. Just like, did you see the fight? So Mr. Clyde King says his signal's goofy. Folks, I saw LinkedIn, it seems to be like dragging. We're on YouTube. Check out the learnings and missteps. Search learnings and missteps on YouTube and you can find us there. But he says his signal is goofy. So assuming that it's just going to work and everybody's going to be able to get it, we're on LinkedIn again, everything's going to be fine. Just prove that ain't true.
Yeah, maybe 60 million people are tuning in tonight. Who knows?
That's
Yeah.
what it is. We're broke the internet, Thomas. All right. So we're
Okay.
starting with, let's see, chapter 7 is self-limiting or
Yes.
self-sustaining growth.
So remember, I just want to recap just to kind of get people back in the frame of mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember the importance of patience, right? You
Ooh,
remember the thermostat concept and being mad at your mechanical contractor who installed that?
yeah.
You installed that system, that HVAC system, And all you can see, basically, if you're looking at your wall and that thermostat, the HVA system is, I suppose you can see the register and the return, but most of the HVAC system is hidden when you're looking at the thermostat anyways. And you're
Yes.
like, okay, I want to change the system. So I push the button, or not, I can do it on my phone, because I'm a high tech.
You're fancy
But I
now.
have to wait, right? It's not instantaneous. And if I'm impatient with my system, I kind of get mad at it, right? I'm
Yes.
like, oh, come on.
Work,
I
damn
have,
it.
yeah. So, like, if I get mad at it, I will overreact. And it's a natural human behavior, right?
Yep.
And I'll juice it up to 74, 75, 76 if I want to heat it up, because listen, we're getting into the heating weather now, even here in Georgia. I have to resist that urge to overreact. It is a both unconscious and conscious thing you have to do. The unconscious thing is to freak out. So if you're given and the example what you were asking me was like, Thomas, if you're given news that a generator is going to be 4 weeks later, is that a good or a bad thing? And it's like, it is. It's neither good nor bad. It's just is.
It just is. Yep.
Freaking out about it is the enemy. Right?
Yes. Yes.
The worst thing that we can do is freak out. But
Yes.
that's generally speaking what usually happens is the overreaction. It's like, oh, we got to go to a new vendor, or we have to make all kinds of crazy trade-offs, or what, right? So
Right.
and that happens. And most of the time, if you kind of look back later, that overreaction does more damage than that 4-week hit. If you did nothing else than just took the hit, just took that 4-week, did nothing else, perhaps you could have done other proactive things, like rearrange things, maybe taking some burden off your electrician because, hey, they don't have to worry about all this emergency electrical component stuff because, hey, that whole system is not coming in until now. Let's focus on the primary side of the thing. It's got all kinds of design changes to it and all kinds of crazy controls. Let's focus on that for a while. Because guess what? At the ends of projects, most of that comes in at the same time anyways.
Yep.
And it's all complex. So, right? And so what Peter Senge calls that, he calls that you uncover hidden delays. When you do that, if you don't overreact and you do this overcorrection thing that freaks out, if you do that doubling down thing that people talk about, like, no, I'm going to double down and I'm going to write delay letters and I'm going to do this thing, right, with paper, and I need more crews. And I need this. I'm writing, like, I'm going to go down to
I need a recovery plan. And we're going to meet once a week. Yep.
Yes. Yep. Right. That's probably still needed. Let the guys with the white collared shirts in the back office probably still do that because they need something to do anyways. They need to feel important. Like that's me. I'm making fun of myself. But the real world situation on the ground, right? The situation on the ground, the electricians, the superintendents, the foremen, the carpenters, like the guys who aren't really affected by that delay, directly impacted.
Yes.
They can think on their feet.
Yes.
Right? Be like, they're not honestly really impacted. So let's give them tools, start letting them do this circular, the cause and effect tool. Be like, hey, if that thing's not here, what else could we do or what? Like, start problem solving there.
Oh yeah.
What do you think about that? Like that's a completely open, that's opening your mind. Yeah. And that I think is pretty rare, but what do you think? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of uncovering hidden delays, right? Like the other side of that is the theory of constraints, right? When you solve a problem or fix a constraint, you're going to find another one. We know that already. We talked about that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so this is kind of the inverse of that. Like, okay, you got this big thing. Instead of freaking out and allocating all your resources and energy to that one thing, let's go look at the other things that are still tracking, because there's hidden delays there. And I think about the times, like, or maybe I think about it in these terms: missed opportunity, right? Like when I focus too much energy in this area, there's always missed opportunity. And so can you avoid missing opportunity? Maybe not, but I can absolutely manage how much energy I put in one area to minimize the loss of opportunity in other areas. And so for me, that's what comes to mind with this thought, right? Like if I'm tripping out and freaking out about this damn thing, the discipline is to say, oh, does this require all of my attention? Because being angry about it and pissed off and raising hell about it takes a lot of energy, which steals the energy. Right. I'm here and all kinds of stuff like I'm ignoring, right? Because this is what happens when we focus. People say that I'm pretty good at focusing. I don't know that I'm really good at focusing. I think I'm really good at ignoring. And so when I'm focused on something, all of us, we are by definition ignoring everything else. And so in this type of situation, the generator's late. I'm going to hyper focus on the thing. I'm going to beat the door. I'm going to call everybody. I'm going to threaten everybody. In the meantime, I'm not fulfilling my core responsibilities. But we don't. So the discipline is, wait a minute, this thing's going to suck me in. Let me give it some attention because I have these other things that I need to execute, or there's other opportunities to go in and dig deeper and look for those hidden delays.
Yes. In chapter 8, I have a really fancy word for that.
Uh-oh. Come on.
But I have another fancy word in chapter 7. It's called archetype.
The archetypes.
Archetype.
Yes.
So in chapter 7, self-limiting or self-sustaining growth, it kicks it right off. And the key idea in chapter 7 is says limits to growth archetype. And this archetype describes a common pattern in which initial period of rapid growth eventually slows down or even reverses due to internal or external constraints. And it gives a couple examples. A company's rapid expansion might be limited by market saturation, resource depletion, or internal capacity. And Blockbuster Video comes into mind. Sometimes there's delays, right? Like you have a delay between the growth and the limiting factor, right? Like you get really huge, and you don't understand the limiting factor until it's too late.
Right.
And then sometimes like we overcome limits with short-term solutions that ultimately worsen the underlying problem. Those are called band-aids, right?
Ooh. Yep.
So can you think of another example?
I promise I'm not like calling anybody's team or company out. I just seen it
There's so many construction, right?
Right,
so
like
many.
all over the place.
Yes.
So business decide to go into a contractor decides to go into a new market. And they're hustling to just break through and get some work in the market. And they get through and they start growing. They start getting more work because they want to get the work. And all of us, so what happens? What's their constraint? People. So they have to inject new people. Most of them are going to be experienced hires, which means They're coming in with a different set of thinking, different set of processes, different way of doing the business. And they're successful. So they get more work. Now they're getting repeat clients. And the repeat client is saying, wait a minute, this is not the experience I had on project X. What the hell is going on? And so now the limiting factor is no longer personnel, it's their systems and processes, because they don't have any consistent system and process in place because they've been cowboying it to gain market share. They start under delivering clients, they start losing credibility. Then it's back to basics. We need to get back to basics. And this cycle, man, I've seen it over and over and over and over again. And so maybe the one thing I'll add for clarity is those limiting factors aren't always the same. The cycle is the same. And paying, like, having the discipline to say, wait a minute, we've been through this cycle before. How do we design the system to mitigate the limiting factors that we faced before?
Yep. Really high failure rate. I was just looking it up.
Yeah.
17% of construction companies survive in 20 years.
Oh my God. There you
According
go.
to the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Right.
Right. So that means, and that's, I mean, think about it. Wow, that's crazy. 17% of construction companies in 20 years. And it's very true. I mean, and think about it, construction companies. And at DPR, this was a very, very conscious thing. About when my company was being founded, because it was spun off from a family-owned company. It was spun off from a family-owned company. And they didn't want to go down that path because a lot of family-owned companies don't survive the next generation. Many don't. Many do. There are many that do. But many don't, because the next generation don't want to work in the business.
Because they saw the misery.
Yes. There's a great book by Jared Diamond that really dives into that subject. It's called Collapse. Really talks about, this is the more along the stories of ranchers in Montana.
Okay.
That their children don't really get into that business because ranching in Montana is really hard, hard, and it's a hard life.
Yes.
And that land, very lucrative,
right?
Very lucrative. So if you inherit land, especially in certain parts of Montana, and you can sell it and be a millionaire.
Yeah.
Or
without all the
Yeah, or if you want to ranch it, you're a hundredaire, or in debt, probably indebted for life, right? You're probably in parentheses your entire life because it's very, very difficult work and not a very high margin business. And it's very true in construction, is where it's hard to do. So failure rates are very high because it's that same behavior. It's like just that growth, because it's like you can get so much work and you're new, and it's like, oh, this is guys, and it's like, I'm tired of this company X over here, let's try these guys out, we'll just throw them all their work. And it's the same if we're only doing the same behavior and we haven't changed anything.
Yes.
And it's like we haven't fixed the cash flow problem. Right, we're not getting paid on time, and we get strung out on credit, and it's like, boom, you're out of money, right? And boom, poof, they go away too. Yeah, it's a very typical thing. So limits to growth.
Yes, sir.
Another, I guess you were at LCI, but I like. You saw this guy.
I did. Yes, I did, Mr. Jocko.
Yes, Jocko. But he's got this field manual. If you're into it, but I like Jocko's book, especially the field manual, Discipline Equals Freedom field manual. It's a
Yes.
it's a very Jocko book. Like it's
Totally.
black on black paper.
Yep. That's an awesome. The layout of the book is fantastic.
Yes. But I wrote down my favorite parts because it grasps this concept because it's like I always I give Jocko I maybe part of me didn't go to San Diego because I was scared
Yeah.
because he's gonna beat me up. But like at 4:30 in the morning, when Jocko says like you need to get up and get after it, like a lot of construction workers are already up and after it and at work. So,
Yes, sir. Yes.
but his concept of like getting up and get after it is like you get up and get going because of that limiting factor of just laying in bed. He says, emphasize pushing beyond your perceived limits. A lot of your
Yes.
own limits is in your own mind, right?
Yes.
Both
Yes.
physical and mental, like your own limits to becoming more healthy, more strong, a better leader, whatever it is. It's
Starting
up
a
to you.
business.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Right? It's your own physical well-being. It's up to you, right? You
Yes.
need to own that. And Jocko advocates it, literally states it, like get up at 4:34 in the morning and go do intense workouts and overcoming that limit of comfort. And like my bed behind me.
Oh yeah.
I don't get up every morning at 4:30, but some mornings I do. And it's hard
Yeah.
getting out of bed at 4:30 in the morning and it's all toasty in there and
Oh yeah.
it's
10 more
like
minutes.
outside and it's kind of drizzling. You're like, I don't want to go run 5 miles. Like, maybe I'll do it tomorrow.
Right.
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 So, but then also that's one archetype. So I'm trying to link Jocko and Peter Senge together. Another concept in Jocko's book is shifting the burden. So that's another archetype, right? Like, I'm going to take this burden and I'm just going to shift it. Jocko says, he warns against relying on external motivators, right? Like,
Ooh.
oh, I need this app or I
Yep.
need a shortcut, right? He's like, right here on the back, there is no shortcut. There
Yep.
is no hack. There's only one way. So get after it, right?
Yes.
Right? That's
Yes.
like boom, like Jocko. I hope everybody was inspired at LCI and then just be like, yeah, Jocko, and then they all go back. So, but instead of relying on that motivation, like you gotta build self-discipline. The only way to do it is to do it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So the only way to like have good quality concrete is to like do checkdowns and count embeds and and like
Yeah.
have good placement and check load tickets and like do all these super tedious thing that sucks up resources and it's like that's what it
That's the
takes.
way. Yes.
And it's like how do you get motivated to do it? You just do it. It's like,
Right.
how do you not have roof leaks when it rains 3 inches? Like, you have to look
Right.
at the weather forecast, and then if you have to remember if there's drain plugs in the overflow drains, you have to go climb up on the roof and
Take
pull
them
the
out.
plugs. No one's gonna do it for you, right?
Yep.
If everybody has gone home and there's a storm coming in, you're the only one there. No one is going to go up there for you. And if you don't go up there and do it, the roof is going to flood and that's
You've
it.
got problems. Yes.
So
Yeah.
shifting the burden, that's an archetype. Long-term vision,
Ooh.
right? Jocko's like, you got to do it every single day.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. That archetype that Peter Senge introduces, long-term vision, it's the same thing here. It's just that every single day you do something every day. It's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
It's not a hack.
Yep.
You got to do it every single day. The mental model, no excuse. No
Yes.
excuse, right? Taking
Yep.
control of your action, take ownership. It's the same thing with any systemic change, right?
Yep.
So you know what, like Jocko and Peter Senge, they kind of have it. They kind of have it. So this, I call it the discipline equals freedom, or chapter 7,
Yeah.
however you want to call it. But they're very very similar. I'm a big fan of Jocko, but I'm also a big fan of Peter Senge. As well, and I link them together. You can be inspired by either one. I'm also a big fan of Dr. Goldratt as well, and they're all very very similar. So that archetype
Yeah.
that limits the growth, it's both personal. It can happen in business. It can happen on a team.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
I have a couple examples, but what do you think about? What do you think about that?
Well, I love the connection that you're making between Jocko and the other OGs, because yes, right? Like, it's the what I think the thread is the principles. Like, these things aren't some tagline that they invented. Like, they're talking about real life principles that none of us can ignore. We can make excuses about them, but if we adopt them and embrace them, that's where the answer is, right? Like the long term thinking. Uh, that one's so big that I still maybe don't fully understand, except that playing the long game is made. I guess this is as far as I've come with it. Playing the long game is about just staying in the game, which means not playing to win, right? Which means I'm not looking for shortcuts. What it means is I am actively figuring out how to stay in the game every day, period. Because if I get overly focused on winning, I can make decisions that are going to raise my score in the short term, but they're unsustainable countermeasures that could cost me exiting the game in the future. Right. And so, again, kind of back to the example I gave earlier. If I go and take, like, would you say 17% of construction companies die with, they don't make it past 20 years.
Yeah.
And so most
One
companies,
generation. Yeah.
so you've probably heard this, most companies die of indigestion, not starvation. They get more work, more volume that they can handle, and they can't process it, and they got to shut their doors for all kinds of reasons.
Implode.
Yes. And so, that, in my opinion, that's short-term thinking. I saw the big sexy project. I saw the big, high profile project, that the customer that I've been wanting to work with, and I twisted myself around the axle trying to please them. And then when it came down to it, it was a bad deal, and I can't operate my business anymore. So the short-term thinking of working with the sexy client, the sexy project, cost me the game. Not winning or losing, I can't play it anymore. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Man, I love me some concrete foreman, carpenter foreman. And the reason why, because they do this very well. Carpenters, they do this because they can anticipate a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because they deal with so many things. Especially they can knock some stairs out too.
Yeah.
You ever seen carpenters build stairs? Because you have to, when you build stairs, you have to anticipate rise, run, and
Yep.
those kind of things. But there's this concept of when you especially like when you're pouring decks or pouring a concrete. Let's say we're building a multi-story building.
Okay.
And we're not on the slab on grade. We're on a third story. Let's just say that we're on third story, elevated deck. And you're looking at, and we have many more to go. Let's say we have 25 stories, right? We have many more to go, right? Everyone is like we got many more to go, but we're on number 3, right? And it's like, ugh, you feel the pressure to this momentum to get going, right? And we often overlook things because we feel this internal pressure to overlook things. And when
Just
we
go.
do this, we do the check down, right? We do this thing. We look, we say, okay, we have edge forms around, elevator openings, stair. We got some mechanical sleeves, right? We got, look over here. I got some rebar specific for this equipment that, right, that needs some extra stability thing over here. There's heavy equipment over here. But sometimes we miss things because it's not there and we're blind to it.
Yeah.
And that's a phenomenon. It's actually, it's like we get blind to things because it's not there, but because of we're rushing and we're hurrying.
Yeah.
We get into this availability bias. We're assuming, okay, all these things that are like here that we look at, we'll be like, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. Like we'll check the dimensions of the edge forms and we'll be like, oh, this depth is correct. And this is okay. We'll check the opening. We'll count the rebar. The sleeves are all right. But one thing we rarely do is look for things that are not there.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's a huge, huge problem. And the problem with that, and we talked about this last time, that's a delay, but we don't realize it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has a huge negative impact, especially if it's something really important that needs to be embedded in that concrete and it's not there, like an embed.
Yep.
And we miss that. And it's a super limiting factor.
Yeah.
And it's because we don't understand the interdependencies of things. And a lot of times, like drawings, they don't even show it because like the inventory is hidden on different drawings. And remember the example you said, like the above ceiling thing?
Oh, yeah.
Like the important thing about the above ceiling is that everything is done. Everything.
Right.
Even if like it's not your responsibility, because everything has to go up there, whether it's your responsibility or not your responsibility, it has to go up there. Otherwise, you're going to destroy something.
Right.
Same thing in concrete. Everything has to go in it, or you're going to have to destroy, drill, chip.
Yep. Yep.
You're going to have to do rework. And some kind of negative impact is going to happen if we don't do that. And guess what happens when Thomas comes out with this checklist? It's like, the checklist.
Yep.
It's like this apathetic behavior. And that's like, what do you think I'm curious, like, and I have so many opinions. I'm very opinionated about this because this is like I'm the director of this behavior at my company.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But what is your opinion that underlines this behavior? That's like, this is a pain in the ass. We got to check inventory. Can we just get a machine that counts it for us? Like, why is this? Because honestly, if we miss something, right? If there's a problem, and the count of embeds needs to be 12, and we count 8, are we going to hold off the pour?
Probably not.
Are we a no go? Is this a no go? We got 23 more floors to go, Thomas. Are we a no go for missing 2 embeds?
Right.
Are you kidding me? Right. So, but what do you think the behavior is? Because this is one of those limiting factors right here. It is construction related. It stares us right in the face. Perhaps some people in the audience could chime in, like, what is this behavior? Because this is prevalent.
So
I think this stares us down, and I think this starts to spiral into depression.
Oh yeah.
morale. So what do you
Oh
think?
yeah.
I'll stop talking.
I think there's a lot there. And so on one hand, I think part of the problem, part of the driver of that behavior is craft workers, trades. We figure things out, right? We're given material, we're given information, we're given tools, and we figure out how to make it operational. That's what we do. Sure, there's a drawing. Sure, there's some submittal information, but nobody is like how to install it in the specific situation under the conditions with the limited or abundant resources that we have. That's never described to us. We figure it out. And so when there's a problem, we just figure a workaround. Is it the best way to do it? No, it's not. So that's part of it. We're predisposed to like, okay, well, shit, we can make it work with this. Oh, shit. Okay, well, we can block it out and then we'll come back and pour it later, right? Like there's a lot of ways to work around the thing. So that's one part. I think the other part is having worked in my life a long, long time ago, I never got rewarded for counting shit. The only time I got attention or recognition was for installing things. I didn't get there was no sex appeal to doing a phenomenal job inventorying material when it showed up on site. You know when I got my attention? When I put a lot of stuff in really fast, when I worked a lot of hours to make up for stuff coming in late. So where is the social value? It's in working around the issues. It's in doing the stuff that overcomes that boring thing that nobody cares about. Why do I say nobody cares about it? Is because what's the reward, extrinsic and intrinsic reward for doing a phenomenal job of inventory? I don't know anybody that has ever been celebrated for doing the inventory and making sure that the team was set up for success and had all the bullshit that they needed to do their job. But I've seen tons of people be celebrated for calling and chewing ass, for working late, for giving up their weekend, for giving up their holidays. The third thing I'll say that contributes to this, especially the checklist issue, I think I 100% agree and believe that checklists are phenomenal for things, for managing of things, quantifying. Rob, we'll say it this way. I think checklists are phenomenal for the quantitative stuff that we do in our business. And there's a lot of that. The problem, I think, is we went all the way on the other side, and not everybody, but a whole bunch of people out there got some sort of checklist for qualitative stuff. And so by qualitative, what I mean is culture, right? Appreciation, job satisfaction. And so now we made that a checklist too, and that sucks. So how am I going to appreciate? I got a bad taste in my mouth about these qualitative checklists, right? I got a bad taste in my mouth because I have my quarterly review with my boss, and clearly the only reason we're having it is so she can check her shit and say that she did it. So now I value zero checklists.
Oh.
Right? Like I put them in the same bucket. Like this checklist bullshit is just so somebody can cover their ass and somebody can push liability onto me. What do you think? Is that too much?
I'm the same way with people who pencil whip the annual review.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should see my annual review. I write like chapters on the self-reflection on purpose, because if people want to pencil whip my annual review, you have to read. my annual review is really amazing, but not amazing that I'm a high performer, but it's amazing because we really get into it. But what about overconfidence bias? Like, I got this. Remember we were talking about like We got this, Thomas. Like, what, we've been doing this for 50 years.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that, and on top, like, and layered on top of overconfidence bias, this illusion of control.
Oh
Like,
God.
it's a cocktail.
Yes.
I
Yes.
got I got overconfident, and I'm gonna put a little boiler maker of illusion of control on top, a little kicker.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect recipe.
Uh,
And so, I've been a
that's,
subscriber to the thinking that control is an illusion.
mm, mm,
But then I started thinking like a lot more because it's not like Adam Hoots gives me like I don't agree, I don't agree. Like that's not true because you can control. And I think here's tell me what you think about this. The illusion of control is that control is permanent, that it's static. And so my point is, yes, I can control things for a finite period of time, right? Like I can control dispelling bodily fluids for a period of time because eventually I can't control it. It's going to come out, right? I can control, I have some control of whether I'm going to blink my eyes or not. But at some point, I can no longer control that. And so the illusion is that control is permanent and static. And in the context of what we're talking about here, and I hear it a lot in construction, right? I'm a problem solver. I got control of the situation. We just need control. We need to control the trades. We need to control the marks. We need to, like, it's not static and it's not permanent. And then the overconfidence is, I've done this before. And that's a false statement. You've done something similar before. You have not done this precise thing under these precise conditions
yeah, that's it
before,
right there. Yep.
right?
There's a spectrum. It's like accounting. Um, that's a control, right?
Yep.
CPM scheduling. It's a statistical.
Yep.
You can actually, have a. You can put things together with logic. That's a control. What are other things? There are processes, yes, that you can actually control with logic and those kind of things, right? Robotics,
Yep.
electrical systems. Yeah, of course, but it's not perfect.
Right.
That's
Right.
why I say it's like a spectrum, yeah, because things
Yep.
can get out of control.
Yes.
Yeah, rivers, dams,
Mhm.
many things like that. Yeah, that's why you need checklists.
Yes.
It's because
Yes.
it does. It overlays a checklist overlays some a manner of control because if you knew
Right.
how many embeds went into your slab, if hey I need 22, I can go count them, and
Right.
if all 22 were there, you could state with some confidence we
Yes.
have control of this deck. Yeah, and it's like, and if this deck is at 232 feet above sea level, and if I have a calibrated piece of equipment that can measure that, and it's read back that, I say, hey, I can state with confidence that this building is within control, right? It's called line and grade. So I do agree fundamentally with Adam
Yeah.
on some fundamentals.
Yeah.
There is a study this is by a gentleman named Atul Gawande. You ever read the Checklist Manifesto? I'm a
No.
quality guy, so he's like my BFF.
Okay.
But he basically he did this study with surgeons.
Ah.
These are brilliant people, like surgeons who go
Yes.
to school for a long time, and then
Yep.
they do residency, and then they do internships, and then they don't just cut them loose like we do our people,
Right. Right.
right? And what they did was they studied surgeons who did surgery without checklists,
Yep.
And then they studied them. They said, okay, now use this series of checklists. And then surgeons don't do surgeries by themselves.
Right. Right.
Right? They
Right.
have a whole team. They got nurses, they got anesthesiologists, they got all kinds of people, medical assistants, all kinds of stuff. They got schedulers. It's a whole thing. That's why they call it a theater. I
Yes.
build them before, right? They're cool. But it's the whole thing. And nowadays we build these theaters and they got the checklist up on the screen. We build these screens in these rooms now. Have you seen these?
Nice.
Have you been in these ORs now?
I haven't been in an OR in a while.
They're legit. So these
Okay.
checklists are now like they are up on these screens and they're all color coded. Jennifer Lacey, we both compete on these healthcare jobs, but
Right. Right.
but they literally as they're going through this medical procedure or maybe it's even surgery, it'll it'll go down this checklist now. They can't skip a step, and there'll be a person like on the computer like, okay, you do this step, and then as they're like putting the person back together, they'll do the suturing and all this stuff. They'll make sure they remove all the tools. They don't suture you back up and leave
Right.
some device back inside you. Like, whoops. Right? So, and they actually proved, and this is a scientific proof. Thank you,
Right.
Socrates. That that like the performance increased
Yeah.
both in the surgical procedures and the people's health that like
Wow.
went through the procedure.
Yeah.
Like, well, why isn't this a thing?
Hmm.
We build ORs with visual control boards. Hello, control, by the way.
Right.
Visual boards with checklists on them. We build these things. We build the conduit that has the wire that gets pulled. We have the AV. We build the bracket. We put the TV on the wall. We put the computer system. We build the power for it. We do everything that goes into that whole behavior for that surgeon and that medical team. All that behavior. But we don't follow that same behavior to do that activity. Isn't that wild? Is that just wild to you?
Ah, I would say yes, except that I know
I
how
bet we
true
do,
and
though.
prevalent it is. Right? Like it's the way we function. Even if there was a checklist, we would ignore it. Like, so we got Mr. Andrew and Clyde. They got a conversation going. Andrew says checklists are no more than a reminder CYA for others. See, there you go. The more times you've been burned by things, the more times that aren't even on the checklist that you might find yourself worried about. That's why there's no replacement for experience. That's why a good lessons learned story can be 10 times as valuable as any can jam checklist. Right? So there's that. The checklist idea, for me, I'm going to use that as evidence. And thank you, Andrew and Clyde, for having that conversation.
Also good. Yes.
It elicits an emotional response, right? Because there's something there beyond just complying with the checklist or the use of checklists that humans in construction don't trust, don't abide by. I don't know what it is. Maybe part of it is they're kind of like, I would say maybe checklists operate kind of like police. They come in after the fact. They're not stopping the problem,
Yes.
right? Somebody comes in and says, well, I mean, for real, you've seen this. There's an incident on the project. Somebody gets hurt. Minor injury, right? Nobody's going to the hospital or anything, but there was an incident. And there's a very different approach. One approach, which I'm going to say is the rarest approach, is to say, how is everybody? Have we taken care of the human beings that got hurt? How are the people that were in the vicinity? Because maybe they need some attention too. That's one approach. Again, the qualitative human stuff. The more common approach is, Did they do a pre-test safety plan? Did they have all their freaking PPE on? Did they have it on their report that they were going to be doing these things? So right away, the checklist is used to assign blame to the people, to the victims of the situation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's the enemy is those guys
Yeah.
mentality.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, oh yes. And we weaponize it.
Yes.
We immediately go to that
Exactly.
weapon.
Yes.
Cause yeah, and like what Andrew was saying, that CYA mentality, like use the checklist.
Mm-hmm.
You and how many times? I mean, think about this. You go to there's an incident, right? So and it could be minor, right? Let's just say it's first aid related. First thing we pull for after you deal with the first aid situation, first thing you pull for. Let me see your pretest plan. Is that thing that happened, was that risk associated with what happened? Did we even consider it in that pretest plan? Right?
Right.
God, that's really gross behavior.
Yep.
But that's the first thing we do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think we should do that. I'm not saying that that's bad. I think we should do that because it's a great lesson to learn there, because it's like, listen, like this is a risk that we didn't identify and it happened.
Right.
So I think we should do that, but we immediately go there.
Right.
And
What's the intent?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's the right thing to do at that time.
Agreed.
We should do it
have
because
to.
we need
You
to.
gotta
We
learn.
do, but
Yeah.
like usually what happens is like, oh man, we're gonna get busted because it's not on there. Like that's the feeling. I've been in that situation and not been associated with that feeling. I felt bad for those guys and ladies because they didn't have it on there.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's that limiting factor. And the chapter here, it really kind of tells a story about this company called Wonder Tech.
Yeah.
And it talks about how they really grew. They grew and grew and grew, and they really missed all of these signs of growth and opportunity. And they had an ugly underlying culture, and they missed a bunch of things, and then it just like all kind of imploded on them.
Yep.
And it really missed. It just missed, and then it just went away. This is a real company. Peter Senge studied.
Yeah.
I had a couple of takeaways for the end of chapter 7.
Ooh.
The first one is recognize. Like, remember I said like you have to have patience.
Yes.
It's like the Guns N' Roses song.
Yes.
Got to have a little patience. Yeah.
Yeah. I would whistle if I could.
Yeah. So you got to recognize those limiting factors. The only way to do it, you got to look around. You got to kind of take a moment, take a beat, recognize the limiting factors. The only way to recognize your limiting factors, you got to become self-aware.
Yeah.
That's hard when you're overreacting. Super hard.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible when you're overreacting.
Right, because you're all in your
that's-
emotions.
That's why you need third parties,
Yeah.
like a Jesse. Almost required, yes.
Yeah.
Like I gave the example of my blood pressure and my weight struggle. I struggled for years. I don't think I'm ever not gonna struggle with my blood pressure or weight for the rest of my life. 100%.
Right.
So first thing I did, maybe not first thing, but one of the things that really helped, I went and got some help. And guess what? If you go to your doctor and say, hey, I kind of want to improve my blood pressure and my weight, your doctor will be like, all right. They're not going to be like, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Nah, that's not a good one.
Yeah. Like, if you're, and you have to be genuine and serious about it, and then we'll be like, let's talk about your diet. Let's talk about exercise. Let's talk about sleep. Like here's a pamphlet. Like let's have a real conversation. I want to test your blood.
Yeah.
Let's get to a specialist. You want to talk to a dietitian. Like let's talk about this kind of stuff. But you have to recognize you're not an expert even of your own body. You're not an expert in biology. You're not an expert in blood science. You're not an expert in many other things. And also, if you remember, I'm genetically prone to some of these factors, if you
Yep.
remember. But those weren't the only factors,
Right.
right? Remember that?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I can control what goes in here.
Oh yeah.
I can control how much time I spend on my bed. I can control that. Not 100% control. Like sometimes I got to work late or I got to travel, but certainly I can be mindful of it. So you have to recognize those limiting factors. You have to recognize them. They're limiting. You can't control them. Notice, Adam, I didn't say control limiting factors. I said recognize them.
Yes.
And if you remember if you start to chart out system diagrams, and this is important to chart system diagrams, like chart them out, like write them out, get a whiteboard,
Yeah.
like looking at my apartment bedroom wall. I got one over here. We got a Kanban board going. I look
Yes.
like a crazy person if my landlord comes in. But you have to recognize your limiting factors.
Yes.
Once you've identified them, address the root causes. Be like, okay, what's limiting to that? And then it's like, okay, I want to address the root cause just to that limiting factor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now you don't have to solve world peace. You just have to
Right.
solve what's contributing. Might not even be the root cause. It's just be like, here's 3 contributing factors to me eating in excess. We got apple pie. We got candy bars.
Yeah.
And we got, you know what? I had 3 energy drinks, right?
Yep.
Like if you list this out, it's like and then I had 3 handfuls of almonds.
Yeah.
You just list them out. Just list them
Yep.
out. So if you actually list those out, you can start to address them.
Yes.
And instead of relying on short-term solutions, like I need to get right, like I need to get a prescription for Ozempic or
Right.
or stuff like that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like you can address root causes. Maybe I do. Well, who knows? So you have to address root causes to each one of those. So on your map, like directly write it on there, write it on your map. If you have your map of your generator delay, be like, okay, well, what do we need here? We need a logistical plan to deliver this generator. We need a one-line diagram and an energization plan to hook it up. We need a check down system, like a lockout tagout plan to, isolate that side of the system while the generator is not there, while we energize the permanent side, like all this stuff, right? You have to figure those side out. Like figure that out. It's like, oh, this is action we can do right now. Right?
Yes.
Go do that. And then you understand that sustainable growth often includes recognizing and respects those limits.
Yeah.
And be like, you know what? Those are limits, but you know what? I can recognize that I'm not going to qualify for the Olympics.
Right.
I'm not going to go and try out for the Navy SEALs.
Right.
Or go to Ranger School, but I can do push-ups.
Yes.
Right? Or I can run 5 miles, or I can work on instead of doing 10-minute miles, I can do a 9-minute mile or whatever
Yes.
it is, right? And there's no shame in that, or anything like that. Or you know what? Understand that we're doing 12 weeks on our pour cycle and understand that like that's the current condition and we need to get to 8 weeks.
Right.
So, okay. All right. Well, what's in that 12 weeks that's limiting? Well, we're taking 3 weeks to do this. Okay. Well, let's study that.
Right.
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 And you can really start to frame in on that. And those are things you can utilize immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. And go back to there is no shortcut. There is no hack. Go back to Jocko. And I'll give you, and it's right there. It's right here. It's like page 55. Hesitation.
Oh.
Right? Hesitation is the enemy.
Yes.
Hesitation allows the moment to pass, the opportunity to be lost, the enemy to get the upper hand. Hesitation turns into cowardice. It stops us from moving forward, from taking initiative, from executing what we know we must. Hesitation defeats us, so we must defeat it. I should talk about like Jocko's voice. Like,
Yes.
yeah, but it is the archetype in action.
Yeah.
Hesitation as a limiting factor.
Yes.
So that's chapter 7. What do you think we move on? We're at the hour mark.
We're at the hour mark. Yeah. No, I mean, I think of course, my head always kind of dancing back and forth between how these concepts apply in the business space, but also as an individual, as a human being, right? And I think maybe the last thing I'll say before we move on is the idea of identifying the contributing factors. Right? I personally have been in situations where it's like, no, we got to get to the root cause. And we're analyze. Let me quantify. Come on, man. Like there's a bunch of shit, like you just said, right? There's the monster drinks, the candy bars, and the tacos.
Ooh,
Which one's contributing more? Pick one and stop doing it. Like, come on.
or instead of 5 tacos, maybe just
Right. Yeah. There you go. Instead of 5, let's do 2. And so it's like identify the contributing factors or the limiting factors, and then pick one to run an experiment on. Like that's how, or maybe another thing to think about is this analysis that we like to get all spun up in is disguised hesitation. Like we feel like we're busy, but we're really just hesitating to make a damn decision and take action. And that's applicable on the job site. That's applicable at home in your fitness journey. Like it's applicable in you want to start a podcast? I'm going to tell you right now, if you got a laptop, if you got an iPhone, you can start a freaking podcast right now. All your analysis, you're just hesitating. Go do the damn thing.
That's how Joe Rogan got started. He just had a laptop.
Yeah. That's all you need.
Yeah. Now he's got like a freaking warehouse in Austin, freaking gym, and
but
millions of subscribers. Yeah.
People want to research, what's the best topic and what's the best mic, what's the best. Like, okay, sure. And you could just start the damn podcast. Like you can figure that out by doing the thing.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Chapter 8. This one. Chapter 8, like.
Oh, this is like personal mastery now, huh?
This one. This one gets me like. Gets me in the cockles of my heart, if you know what I mean. Like. Ooh,
yeah.
Woof. So, I'll try to introduce it because it transitions from chapter 7 to chapter 8. So once you understand limits, you have to effectively intervene. right? So this is the theory of constraints chapter. So if chapter 7 was discipline equals freedom, chapter 8 is theory of constraints. Because this is where
Nice.
you use constraints to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
So this is where leverage points comes in. So this chapter introduces in your personal life. This is personal mastery. So you can use leverage points in places where focused action can yield disproportionately large results, right? This is where people who's it, Steve Martin, that does the ultra marathon.
Yeah. 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 Not Steve Martin.
I'm now like, I used to be like, how does he do it? But now I'm like, I can now I can now like maybe do 3 hours. I could just touch it, but I couldn't even think about doing more than that. Actually, I did a challenge. It was 7 hours, but but not for many long. I couldn't even do 100 miles. That's crazy. Still crazy to me. But that's leveraging, because again, those hundreds of miles after so many miles, it's just mental, right? It just
Oh,
becomes a
hell
mental
yes.
challenge, right? So you just leverage your mind. And maybe this is the David Goggins challenge too. This is the
Ah,
David Goggins chapter.
okay. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And there's 12 levels to it. And I'll list them all out. And afterwards, on the LinkedIn, you have the LinkedIn page where you like to post to this. I'll
Yeah.
try not to break any of Dr. Peter Senge's intellectual property. So I guess I'll have to like summarize it, but I'll
Yeah.
list
Yeah.
out the 12 levels
Yes.
of his leverage points. And it goes from shallow to deep with of the varying levels of impact.
Yeah.
But it starts out with the story of creative tension. I guess it doesn't really start out, but there's a part of this chapter that talks about creative tension. But before I tell the story, like, what do you think about? Because it's like, this is how I'm kind of inspired by you, because you have this. It's like this drive. But maybe you can describe this to me. Like you have this and it just doesn't ever let up. It's just like this drive to keep going, to keep just no matter what. In the face of like all kinds of adversity and unknown, and it's tension. Like you have to, like it's from within, and you have to keep it. What is that? How do you feel it? How do you keep it on? It's like Peter Senge calls it like a source of energy, but
Yeah.
what is it for you?
Oh man, that's probably something I haven't spent enough time thinking about, but I have thought about it a little bit. And so, like on one hand, some people have asked, like, how do you have the confidence to do the stuff that you do? And I'm like, I don't. I think my ignorance appears or presents as confidence. I just don't know that I'm not supposed to do it, right? Like I just don't know what I don't know, and so I do things, and it looks like confidence. So there's one piece there. Another piece of it is early on when I was a youngster, I got to witness abuse, and for a long period of time, I didn't do anything about it. And then I finally did something as a skinny little 8-year-old, stood up and just stood up against it. And it changed for people that I loved. And the lesson I learned was all you got to do is take action and you can change things. It doesn't matter how much authority you have. It doesn't matter your size. It doesn't matter. What matters is the action. And so the third part of it is, I think, is longevity or consistency. I don't like the word consistency necessarily. Commitment is way more impactful than all the other Hollywood metrics. And so by commitment, when I decide, like, the things that have brought me the most regret and the things that have brought me the most fulfillment, I can measure them in terms of how committed I was to them. So we'll just use my 2 failed marriages. Like, I gave up on those things and quit. Like, the first one was 6 months, the second one was 4 years. And that's not a thing I'm proud of. There's other things, like I've been committed to the trades. I've been committed to certain people. Like, there's other things that I have been committed to for a very, very, very long time. And that has more impact for people to know that, man, you've had a podcast for 4 years, or man, you post on, well, just use social media because it's very visible, right? I post every single day. Like, wow, like, it gives this impression that people interpret to mean something, but it gives me a little extra permission to contribute into people's lives. And so if I'm committed to something, I have to decide, there's a new thing, a new project, a new whatever. Do I have what it takes? I mean, and this was the criteria I used before I went to go work for Turner, right? Whole new universe that I had no business, no background, no training to step into. The question I asked myself, it was 3 questions. If I go over there and get fired within a year, is there enough opportunity to learn that I can't currently get where I'm at right now? That was 1. Number 2, do I have the endurance to tolerate rejection and 0 support for a year? Yes or no? And then the last one was, will I have changed enough without any accolades, without any attention? Will I have grown my network? Will I have picked up new lessons and still fail in a year? Is that opportunity there? And so the answer was yes to all 3. Those things were not present at my current condition at that time. So then it's a matter of just go do the thing. Like, go and give it a year and see what happens. Turned out I had some skills that I wasn't aware of that made it longer than a year, and made it much, much more fulfilling. And the growth was far exceeded anything I could have expected. And so it really is idea. I don't know exactly what the hell I'm doing, but I know if I don't give up, I will have some impact. And that's it. Was that too convoluted?
Yeah. And a few days later, you got on a plane to California to come see me.
Well, and then I went like that. That was, I mean, that's a good, because I've been in tons of those situations, right? I mean, so we'll use that one. So the San Francisco airport, I'm in the very first time I have ever been in a room with designers and architects and like like big fancy people. I've never been in those rooms before. I was a freaking plumber a month before that, right? They didn't want my ass around. So I'm in this room with an audience of people that I just don't know how to behave around. And I could I could hide and say, oh, I don't know what to do. Let's wait for Thomas. Or I could go to my checklist and do what I know how to do to at least get the ball rolling. And the outcome was way better than I could have expected. And I'm glad that you told me about it. Now, another situation just like that happened to me in high school. The guys it was a prank we would do to each other. It was wintertime, it was cross-country training. And so it was super cold in the morning. And because I was always pranking the guys, they decided to prank me. So what they did is, as I got out of the shower, had my towel on, they picked me up and carried me out. So the boys' locker room was like a field house. It was separate from the rest of the campus. So they carried me outside and yank my towel and lock the door. So they lock me outside. I'm naked. It's wintertime. Okay. And the soccer team is practicing. The girls' soccer team is practicing. Okay. I don't know, sophomore or junior at the time. And I had a choice. I could roll up into a little ball in the corner and hide, and there would be a story about it. Or I could act like it was no big deal. So I acted like it was no big deal. I had a 57 Ford Ranchero. So I walk over to my truck naked, waving at people. Hey, and it's cold, boy. Like, and I'm terrified inside. I walk up, I get my cleats out because I have my cleats in the back of the truck and cover myself up with my baseball cleats. And like it became a thing. And so the situations that we're in, we may not like the lesson I got between both of those things. They're new situations, but I can choose to show out or I can choose to shrink and cower. And I have plenty of data points that if I just show out, the outcome is way, way better than cowering. That's it. And I learned from it. Andrew's giving me some props. He says, I think you're not afraid to be wrong. That's powerful. Yeah, like I know I'm gonna be wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I know I'm not gonna do the best job. I know that if I spent more time or if I got a coach or if I made an investment, I know that there's a lot of things that I could do to perfect whatever the thing is. And I also know I can get started right now. And I'm okay with that. Daryl says learning and contributing is key, but sometimes the resistance can wear us down. And and so maybe that's another point. And I know I'm rambling now, but for me, the resistance is an invitation. For me, the fact that it's not practical is an invitation to see, can I do it? Can I do this? I want to find out if I can do it. And I also know that I'm going to learn a lot by trying, by getting into the thing. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
that is it. It is a source of energy.
yes.
That's back to the book. But yeah, if you get locked out naked, the whole point of getting naked was to embarrass you, right?
Yes.
So if you're not embarrassed,
right.
it's like superpower. Like what?
What?
Like
What
the
are you
whole
gonna
point
do?
of you getting locked out was to embarrass you. So if you're not embarrassed, then it's like the joke's on you. I'm not embarrassed. Oh
Yep.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, and even though if you're embarrassed inside,
Right.
yeah.
I was, but I
And the
wasn't
same
showing
thing
it.
with the pull plan at SFO. We weren't. Well, maybe we were trying to mess with you, but the participants in any pull plan, I don't care who it is, it could be anybody, and so we were with designers, so we had architects, I think structural engineer, so we had Gensler architects in there, and it was a design phase poll. Guess what? Human beings, right? And
That's
we're
it.
doing. What do you need? You need a task that has needs. Okay. What is who? What is your need? Okay, you need something from the structural engineer. Who's the structural engineer? You get over here, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the task? Okay, you need this part of the design complete so you can do your piece. Okay. What's the task for that? Right? And it's like boom.
Yep.
Okay. Put your card up there. Okay, next.
That's it.
Right. So you're facilitating. You don't even need to know the steps if you're facilitating the thing. And guess
Yes.
what? That's all it was needed.
Yes.
Was that piece. And guess what was happening? People like freaking fell into line and stuff started happening. And that's what we needed. Before that, everybody's like, all these people with professional
Yeah.
stamps and degrees and really smart people couldn't freaking do an organizational chart because they didn't know how to do it, and they were too proud to start talking to each other.
Yep.
So they needed Jesse there to be an intermediary. And that's exactly what we needed. And that drove the action. And so creative tension drove the action. That's what happened. That's what was needed. And so if you go back to chapter 8, creative tension is the gap. It's the gap between the vision and reality. Reality is current reality. Current reality. So Peter Senge describes creative tension as the inherent tension that arises when we hold a vision for the future. It's like, okay, we need this design set put together by this date, and it needs to be completed in this order, and it has to have these components. That was the goal for that phase plan.
Yep.
All right, that was the goal. Okay, all right, here's the goal. We have these people who are in charge of each part of these components. They're all gathered here today. And they're each in charge of each of one of the components, and each one of those components, they have a team of people who are they in charge of, right? So they'll take each of their components and go back to their team and organize from that organizational chart, which we will create a plan from. I think we did it. I think we put it in P6. I think that's what we did. But that's what was needed. Was we knew the goal, and we knew where we stood. We stood there. We didn't have the organization piece. We had a gap. The gap was we need the organizational chart. We needed the chess pieces arranged in order that was logical. 1, 2, that everybody could agree on. Because at that moment, the current reality, I don't want to freaking project's already going now, so I'll spill the beans. We couldn't agree on the sequence. The sequence could not, at that point, couldn't agreed on. That's why we had to call that meeting and agree on that sequence. And we needed to organize our way to it. So even though I freaking trained that team for like weeks, and we did several pre-polls and all kinds of pre-situations and woodblock games and homework galore, and all that had to happen. All right? That had to happen. But what needed to happen in between that was that creative tension, and that was happening in that room. And then the act of that planning session, what came out of that was an organized chart which we can create a schedule with and go forth and go execute it with. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And that's the stretching. So there's a story in there, and there's a little, maybe you can flip to the page. There's a guy, a little stick figure, and he's got like 2 rubber bands, and he's in between 2 rubber bands. There he is. Oh, I guess it's 2 hands. Current reality. What's the top one?
Vision.
The vision. Current vision.
Yep. Current reality and vision.
And vision. And that's creative tension. And it's the stretching is the energy. Literally, it's kinetic energy, if you're talking physics now. But that's the source of energy. So maybe that's the creative tension. It's in the book, but it's the feeling. It's a feeling within you. That's why it like gives me, because like it's the drive. It makes me shoot out of bed every day. It gets me excited to go build something that's never been done before, ever. Yeah. Many things have been done similarly. And we'll have conflict, and we have arguments, and like there's all kinds of constraints. Oh my God. But it propels us into action every single day. And we have to learn, we have to grow and bridge gaps. And every single day is the current reality. And we know where the vision is, right? And it drives us to action. What do you got?
I think so. Let me think about it this way. There was a period of my life that I didn't have that energy. And and I think it was because I was drowning in my current reality, and I didn't have a vision, right? Like I just didn't. I'm just like, why is everything happening to me? Why is life this way? Why do things suck the way they do? And somewhere along the way, I know it happened during high school, it became clear that, oh, wait a minute, I could change things. Like I could really, like before I knew that change could happen, I didn't know that I could change things. And then as I gotten older, and especially now, it's like, okay, what is one thing? What is a vision? What is a target direction that I can pick that's going to cause me to learn and grow the most? Right? And I think about that too much. And so I get an idea in my head that I can't let go of. So that's the vision that's always pulling me from where I'm at. It's like, okay, I'm here. This thing isn't leaving me alone. How am I going to get there? How am I going to get there? But when it became clear to me that I needed to start my own business, because no company was going to keep me on salary to do what I wanted to do. Of course not, right? Like it doesn't align with their business needs. Then it's like, okay, I need to start a business. There's the tension. Here's where I'm at. I've never run a business before. I have no freaking idea how to start a business. I don't even know how to send an invoice. But I'm going to start a business. There's the vision. Here's where I'm at. And that's where the energy comes from. So I guess summary, without a vision, that tension, that energy, you're going to have to find it somewhere else.
That's right. That's right. There's problems with current reality, though, right? We can be biased.
Oh, yeah.
Or we can have our blinders, right? Like, remember
Yes.
that, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's why don't skip the first 7 chapters.
Yep.
Current reality you have to have really good self-awareness. If you're going to be a personal mastery, you're going to do this on your personal self. Right? Like you have to know exactly who you are. Like yoga, all the practice, like all of those things, like you have to know exactly who you are because specificity comes into play. You have to know exactly what to do. So the having low creative tension, the gap is too small. Right.
Yes.
You might not have enough energy if your vision is too low.
Yep.
Your rubber band is like got slack.
I'll get to it. I can do it tomorrow. Yeah, totally.
Right. I mean, you need Jocko.
Yes.
Get after it. And sometimes like this happens. This is my gripe in the annual review. Like your goals setting is like also the project's goals, or maybe it's the company's goals, and your vision is like so tight, like it's impossible to achieve because of constraints, and your vision, like your creative tension, like snaps because it's impossible. Right. So if you have excessive creative tension, if the gap is so large, like oh, I'm gonna play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Yep.
It can overwhelm you, or it can like even discourage you. Right? You give up on your dreams.
Yes.
Oh, there it is. There's the guy. So you're constantly in this you're the guy in the middle.
Yeah. So on one end of the guy,
what does it say?
One end of the guy, it says belief in powerlessness or unworthiness. That's pulling you back. Then there's your current reality, and then there's your vision. Right? So vision, powerlessness or unworthiness, and we're in the middle, and the tension is pulling in both directions.
So how do you think that relates to like mental health and wellness?
Oh
Like
man,
on the far end of the spectrum,
yeah.
like
No, I think
learned helplessness and
yeah.
hopelessness.
So let's talk about. Well, I'm going to pick learned helplessness. So I've been on probation the majority of my adult life, right? Like probation with the law, where I couldn't leave the county without permission. And I remember early, maybe the first couple of times, and I'm talking about for years and years, right? I can think back into the way I functioned in my 20s, my late teens, my early 20s, hell, even mid 20s. I was in the system, and so what that means is I had all of these people telling me what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And the way I functioned was I wouldn't do anything that I wasn't told to do, right? Because I was on probation. I didn't want to go, I didn't want to get locked up. I didn't want to violate my probation. And so when I was when that was my system that I was living in, being like I had these restrictions, ankle monitors, the whole thing, right? I had all of these things, these constraints that I had developed, learned helplessness because I couldn't. Well, I would work out, but I got my ankle monitor and I got to be in by 6 p.m. and I can't leave till 6 a.m. Right. Well, I would invest in myself in that course, but I got to pay my probationary fees. Well, I would, but I don't know. Like, I would take that trip or go to that class, but I can't leave the county. Right. And so, sure, those things were kind of true. Fast forward to the last time I was on probation, and I made a career change that was going to require me to travel across the country and require a judge to sign a paper to say it was okay for me to leave the state. And I didn't let that get in my way. I said, we just got to figure out how to make that happen. And so I think maybe in some situations, the conditions that we're living in reinforce learned helplessness. But the growth, so in like, I think I'm living proof that we can change our thinking and understanding of the systems that we're in so that we break out of that learned helplessness. Now, how does that connect to mental health and this sort of thing? When I was in that learned helplessness state, I didn't see any different in my future. It looked the same year after year, year after year, time after time. I couldn't see a different future. I kept having the same problems. I didn't know how to seek help. I didn't know how to ask for help. And so I remember many, many times feeling, what is the point? I'm just a waste. I'm just here. I'm not like I'm just a lump on, like I'm having no greater impact on the world than the tires on my truck, right? I'm just here ruining the atmosphere, taking up oxygen. Um, and how did I cope with that? Substance abuse. That's why I was on probation. Like even on probation, hopefully I've exceeded the statute of limitations. Even on probation, I was still doing dumb stuff,
Wow.
hopefully not trying not to get caught. Um, and so my mental wellness was, I didn't have mental well. Like I was in horrible mental and emotional state because of what all was happening, and I couldn't see a way out. I would say there was probably some miraculous or miracles that happened along the way that helped me break that. There were people in my life that there was a little thin thread. They hadn't given up on me entirely, and the fact that they still believed in me and saw something greater in me, those things helped me like catapult out of it. And not everybody has that, right? Some people are stuck there because there is no lifeline. There are no different options that they're aware of. They're suffering alone.
Yeah, you had me and Brian on. Remember
Yep.
that
Yep.
conversation? So this is a real thing. So, and it happens in small units too, like on construction projects,
Yep.
where it's just like you get into these work modes, and it's like, oh, like we need, like you need this like piece of software, and it's like, oh, they won't buy it for us, and it's like, oh,
Hmm.
we have all these punch list items, and it's like this huge pile of them. It's like, oh, and it's like, oh, the owner's being a real yes, right, and they're being really disruptive. Oh, and I'm really frustrated, and like we're out of time, and it's like got a bunch of design changes, and it seems just right, like it compounds, and you learn, and this is a learned behavior. You learn
Yep.
it, and you feel hopeless, and like it seems like everywhere you turn around, it's kind of like the same thing, probably with probation, right? Like you learn this behavior,
Yes.
and it's like it's unescapable. It
Yep.
feels unescapable. Like you can't even get like out from under this.
Yep.
And if it's in your own brain, like if it's right, if this happens and it's like your own, I've suffered from this many times. If it's your own like mental dialogue,
Yeah.
you can't escape it. It's in your brain. Like this is a conversation that's happening in your own brain. Like you can't turn that off.
Right.
Like it's
Right.
hard to
Right.
really
Right.
hard to if you've never experienced this in your own life. It's really hard to explain. People are like, why do people commit suicide? Like, because they can't. They've never experienced that.
Right.
So you can't. There's no context for it. But if you have actually experienced that, like and felt crazy because you have this your internal conversation with yourself that you can't escape.
Yep.
So it's that you feel hopeless.
Yes.
And so I want to give people, and this a little sneak peek from Brian and I's book. There's direct action that you can take. This comes from first responders. They do this thing. It comes from military too. They do these direct action things. So when in like in a fire, like firefighters, they come upon a situation, they will do very specific things, and it just depends on the situation. But if the situation, they see a situation, they will do something very specific, no matter what it is, because if they do that one thing, they can take action on it, and then whatever becomes of that second situation, they can take action on that thing, and they can take a completely chaotic situation, and as long as they're taking action on it, they're taking action upon that situation. Same thing happens in like an ambulance situation or a mass casualty situation. You can do this. I worked with my therapist too. They're like they're they're pro direct action in your own personal life. If you're encountering a panic attack situation, is you take direct action
Yeah.
on your own situation. Get yourself out of the situation. If you can't get yourself out of the situation, you can control your breath,
Yep.
right? If you can't control like if you can't control anything else in the world, even if
Control
you're
your.
completely bound physically, you can control your own breathing. If
Yeah.
you can't control your own breathing, then don't worry about it because you're about to
You got other
expire
problems.
anyways, right? Like, don't worry about the situation because it's about to be over for you anyways. But that's kind of twisted. But so it's yeah, you can take those situations. So in a construction setting, you should have a couple of these prepared.
Yeah.
And so like I gave the example of the inventory check down for like a concrete or a carpenter. Like have your sleeve drawing like ready to go way ahead of time. So when you pour that third floor pour, have your sleeve drawing ready to go for floor three before you're even up there. So when it's time to go, it's already ready. You don't have to scramble for it.
Yep.
And it builds confidence. And maybe you have 4, 5, and 6. And so what that does, it makes a connection to creative tension. And it
Yes.
pulls you back towards your vision. It
Yes.
pulls you away from hopelessness,
Yes.
and like immediately.
Yes.
And it also helps you develop reflexes and decision making ability. So those checklists I was talking about and griping about, those pull you towards vision, right? I
Yep.
mean, they're not perfect, right? There are all kinds of bias associated with it, but what those things do, those QR codes that bring you to like the blue and the orange softwares, that we have on
Yep.
our
Yep.
tablets, those pull you towards the vision. Are they perfect? No. Those little punch list things that we communicate with, those pull you towards a vision as long as we're using them properly and not weaponizing them.
Yeah.
And then they maintain the tension if you're using them all the time.
Yes.
And then it counters inaction.
Yes.
What do you think about
Yeah.
that? So it's like if you have these processes, but you got to have them set up ahead of time. You can't
Yeah.
do it as a counter.
Right. Right. Because
It's worse then. If you have this chaotic situation, be like, oh, let's do the inspection now. Be like, get out of here, right? You have to have it set up ahead of time. That means like you have to have this like long. You got to have the long game. But if
Yep.
you have your direct action drill set up, this is why like Navy SEALs, they do all this freaking training ahead of time. That's why. Because what do? They parachute into war, the most
Yep.
chaotic situation there is. And they don't even speak like because you can't like you're in shooting machine guns, so like they can't even like they use their hand signals because that's all they got to deal with because they
Yep.
can't even yell at each other even in their ear. But that's the idea. You can use this in your own personal life. So we have a whole chapter devoted to that with some signaling and that kind of stuff too. I'm not gonna
Oh,
spill the beans, but
nice. Teaser. The teaser. I love it.
but this chapter also kind of relates to that. What it does when you get into these hopeless situations, or if you're just down in the dumps, or you're getting into like, oh, this contractor X, they're just terrible. Let's just pile on to them and just tell them how terrible they are. Or we'll have the come to the water meeting,
Uh-huh.
right? And anyway, I'm usually using a different,
Yeah.
biblical entity, but
Yeah.
but like we have to use these elevated terms. But what I mean by that's learning hopelessness. What you want to do is move yourself out of that and towards a vision. And how do you do that? You use these tools.
Yeah.
And that's how
Yeah.
you build confidence. What do you got?
Yeah.
What do you got?
It was having flashbacks of the very last project that I was on, and it was one that I was the fixer. So my job at the time was analyzing financial reports and labor projections and reconciling why was there a difference? Because there was always a difference, right? Because the superintendent produced the labor forecast, project manager produced the financial forecast. And so whenever I saw the gap big enough, I'd say, "Oh, we got a problem over here." Anyhow, so what would happen is I'd identify that, we go interact with the team, visit the project, identify like, whoa, wait a minute, we're going to be way over on labor, whatever, and I would kind of help smooth that out, get them closer. Well, one project was both of them, there was a big gap in the projection. Project manager was forecasting making budget and a bonus and finishing on schedule. The superintendent was forecasting 90 extra days worth of labor, and they were at peak labor. So I went out to the job and they were both undershooting. So I ended up taking over the job, right? Because that was my job. I was the fixer sometimes. And that job I was swimming in misery. I took it over in August. No. I took it over in October. And it wasn't until February where I could see daylight. And so this was 16-hour days for me, nights, weekends, the whole thing. And all day long, I was getting my ass handed to me by the GC, by my team, by the gaps, by the punch list, by the lack of, I mean, just problem after every day. And it was overwhelming. And the one thing that I did that I know like helped me work through it was I had a big magnet on one of our stand-up toolboxes down in the basement. And I had all the rooms that we had to work on each floor. Like it's floor 1 through 5, and these are all the rooms. And so every day at the end of the evening, I would walk every stupid room to see which room we could work in tomorrow. And then I'd go down and I'd write down, okay, team A, you're going to be in this room. Team B, you're going to be in these 3 rooms. Team C, you're going to be like, that was all. But just that at the end of the night, when I could go and see what did we finish and what's available for us, because the GC couldn't tell us what was available. They were just, y'all just need to hurry up. I mean, it was freaking nuts. But at the end of the night, when I did that, I'm like, okay, we got a shot tomorrow. And I come back tomorrow, get my ass handed to me again and fight through. Like the hopelessness, Thomas, was real. I mean, all the way to the point where this is how bad it was. We were about to turn over, opening, having the grand freaking dinner, luncheon, whatever. And we discovered that the storm drain was never tied into the utilities. Even worse, there was no storm drain run from the utility to the building. We found this out after the kitchen equipment was started up. So there was hidden Easter eggs all over this project.
I wouldn't call that Easter. I'd call it some kind of a log. Yule log.
Oh, look, we got Mr. John. He's saying, thanks for the subject. He's got to go. Man, John, I hope you come back, and maybe we'll see you Saturday on the Jet No BS with Jen and Jess.
There you go.
So anyway, I know it's a long story.
I love me some walk downs. So in chapter 8, Peter Senge gives the he talks about, and we're almost to that time of the year. It's the Christmas Carol story by Peter Dickens.
Yep.
There's the Dickens. That's not Dickens.
One of those guys.
Dickens, yes, very famous author.
Charles
I'm butchering his name. Yes. But it's like the job site walk down, because you have the ghosts of Christmas past, ghosts of the Christmas present, and the ghosts of Christmas future, because you could go walk the next floor up.
Yep, exactly.
You see all the sins.
Yep.
Oh, I think I've even used that analogy while walking down rooms. Everybody, you can go do this. If you're not walking down rooms and statusing rooms, you're lying to yourselves.
Yes, 100%.
And like, we have these amazing technology now. You can wear a 360 video camera on your head. Get your intern to go do that.
Yep.
I call that my lie detector. Because you'd be like, yeah, we got we set the P trap on the 12th floor, and I'll be like, survey says, I'll be pulling up my
negative.
Lie detector.
You are not the father.
Because it's current reality, right? Because because you'd be like, ooh. So there's other ones, drone deploy. There's other. Oh man, there's so many. But that's why we pay so much money for these technology now, because we can get to current reality so fast.
Yes.
We can get to the ghosts of Christmas present.
Yep.
So quickly now. And that's the Toyota. They have that Genchi Genbutsu concept, right? Go and see.
Go see,
it's
baby.
The same concept. But I want to get to these 12 levels.
Yeah. What do you say we do the 12 as a prelude to our next live stream?
Yes, that's what I want to do. I want to wrap this up with the 12 levels, because it's a good, like. So I'll quickly overview. the 12 levels, because it's not very implicit in chapter 8. It's not like there's not like a list. I think there used to be one. There used to be in some of the I have like one of the old editions,
Yeah.
but some of the editions used to have like a diagram of the levels. But I'll quickly overview it. But it's like a hierarchy, and so it goes from shallow to deep.
Yep.
So the shallow leverage points, and these are the leverage points. So like the shallow ones are like the most obvious. These are most obvious. So, and then the deep ones are harder to grasp. So it's like,
Okay.
it's like easy to really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then but like the like the concept of narrow and deep, like
Yes.
right? Like, and then shallow and wide. It's the same
Yes.
idea, right?
Okay.
Shallow and wide, like almost no impact.
Right.
Narrow and deep, very deep impact.
Lots
Or
of
like the
impact.
pace chart, like right, like the pace chart, like that concept, like
Yes.
high cost, high impact,
Yep.
like
Yep.
those kind of concepts. So deep leverage points, like high cost but like super high impact. Okay, so here's the list. I'll try to summarize the list in the LinkedIn post, but then we'll bring them back. So first one is numbers.
Okay.
So leverage points, you can use numbers, constants, parameters, standards, like subsidies, taxes. Like you can use numbers.
Right.
Numbers. Like numbers, obvious. We need to increase sales by 20%.
Right.
Right?
Easy.
Obvious.
Yep.
Like, wow, yeah, we need to increase profit by 20%. Got it, right? Most obvious, right? These are most easily adjusted elements, but often have least impact.
Right.
These are very obvious. Buffers. Another one, like sizes of stabilizing stocks relative to their flows, like inventory levels, right? Buffers. So you can increase buffers. You can increase buffers like this is like
Yep.
tact, right?
Right.
Like you can increase buffers, can improve your stability,
Yep.
right? Because you can, if you have a bigger buffer and you have an unstable process, you can burn a bigger buffer and it
Yep.
makes seemingly an unstable process more stable, right? But it doesn't. It's like if you have buffers in your tact management process, it's kind of cheating.
A little bit. A little bit.
Not
Yeah.
a commentary on Mr. Schroeder's book. You need buffers, I do agree, but
Right.
more buffers equals more unstable processes. So increasing your buffers, you're not addressing.
Yeah. You're hiding the problem. You could be
Yes,
hiding
you
the
could
problem.
be. You
Yeah.
could
You
be.
could be. Yep.
Yes. So if you're increasing your buffers,
Yeah.
you're not stabilizing your processes.
Right.
You might not be. Stock and flow structures. This is more tact now. This
Okay.
is more like your stock and flow. So this is your physical systems and their nodes of intersections. So this is like number of factories or the layout, like your tact train,
Yep.
right? Like if you rearrange the cars on the train, it's hard, right? But it might help the flow of the work.
Yes.
Or if you rearrange your work zones, right? Like we're gonna work instead of area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're gonna work A, B, C, D, E, F.
Right.
So you're right. So instead of working in a sequential sequence, you work in a logical sequence.
Right.
Right. Those kind of things. Those might be more difficult, but it could save time.
Yeah.
It might like what I mean by if you like a sequence, mean like we're gonna just work left to right, right? Like that would be a sequential sequence. Instead of that, we're gonna work in a logical sequence, meaning like we might on the zone map jump around.
Right.
So it's more difficult, like if you're just looking at it, but once people understand the logic, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
more difficult, like, to learn the system, but once people learn it, it makes complete sense.
Right.
Delays. Here's a bigger leverage point. Lengths of time. So if you start shrinking delays, here's theory of constraints.
Yeah.
If you shrink delays down, like delays in information feedback, addressing delays instead of addressing other parts, you can actually improve responsiveness into your system. All right, so if you're actually focusing on the delay in between steps, so if you like, this is Toyota, like 100% Toyota, like they want no delay. Like that's why they have
Yeah.
they have the Kanban system, because even in a mixed production, meaning they'll build a Toyota Camry with 2 doors and then a gold one and then a blue one and then
Yep.
one with a V6 and then one a hybrid. Maybe they don't do that, but you get the point.
Yep.
They can build a Camry with all kinds of different components, but
Yep.
still do it every 57 seconds or whatever they do now.
Right.
Because of no delays, because of their Kanban system. That's the concept right there. And that's only number 4.
Whew.
5, balancing feedback loops. The strength of feedbacks relative to the impacts they are trying to correct, like thermostats
Yeah.
or quality control.
Ooh, checklist. Ooh.
Yes. So this is after scheduling, or so
Yeah.
this is if you put your quality control system in the middle of your like production. This is scary,
Yeah.
but this is where I work. I'm not always successful in this. Sometimes I get shoved to the end, but a lot of times we work right in the middle. And this where it really works, because we give feedback to crews how they're doing almost instantaneous. Like they'll
As they're
do
doing
a
it,
task and we will go check it.
Yes.
And it's frustrating because it'll be like,
Can we just
we
do our
good? Are we
job?
good? Are we good? Are we good? Or I'd be like, yeah, like let us get a 400-foot run of it going. And be like, you might do 400 feet of it wrong, and then you'll have
Right.
to do it all over.
Oh,
Why don't we just keep checking along the way?
yeah.
They're not used to it, but now once they get used to it, they love it.
Yes.
They're like, they get mad at us for not being faster at the checking, which is a great problem. Oh,
That's
it's
a
a great
good
problem
problem to
because it leads to number 6. It leads to 6 because you get this balancing feedback loop. It leads to 6. It's reinforcing feedback loop, because it's like they want the feedback, right?
Yes.
Instead of
Yes.
the balancing feedback being like, hey, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it. Now it's
Right.
like, check me, check me, check me, check me, check me, check me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like the checkout counter or like self checkout, right? Like you scan the QR code and like the little doodad, like,
Yep.
does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, the way I think about the balancing and the reinforcing, the difference is the balancing feedback loop has friction associated with it. It's
It's
the
like a
thing,
thermostat.
right,
Yeah.
that's happening against something else.
Yep.
The reinforcing is like, okay, now we're it's reciprocal. We're going together in the same direction.
It's like a compounding interest.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like Instagram is a great example. Like
Yes.
if you hit like or subscribe,
Yes.
the algorithm
More
will push
impression.
your
Yep.
post up higher. That's a reinforcing feedback loop.
Yep.
There's pluses and minuses to that on social media, but
Right. Right.
in a construction mindset, it's amazing,
Right.
because this is where a pipe crew will talk to an earthwork crew, and an earthwork crew will talk to a surveying crew, and like, where's the GC? they're drinking coffee in the trailer.
Right.
But what I mean by drinking coffee in the trailer, they're talking to the architect, like getting problem solved out
In the
ahead
head.
of it.
Yep.
Instead
Yep.
of like playing referee, they're
Yep.
being proactive out, and it's like, yes, this is being reinforcing.
Yes.
That's what I want to do. 7, information flows.
Ooh.
Have you ever sat in the in one of those construction tech slide deck where it's
Yes.
like, we're gonna change your life.
Yes.
The construction industry is a $2.7 trillion industry.
Uh-huh. Tell
And
me
so
again.
it's like,
Please.
it's this whole concept of like driving all of these other flows. So it's like, we're going to flow all this information with this giant stack of data.
Right.
And we're going to flow all this data and like let all this data drive information. And like, we will help you make decisions so easy. This is like my gripe against Hollywood metrics, because right now the data that gets flowed to make decisions is so flawed
Yes.
that like you make decisions based on garbage, because the data that's scraped and given to people that make decisions is so biased, or it's so incomplete that it's
Yeah.
Hollywood. It's fiction, because
Right. Right.
it's not, there's not enough good data to do it. Someday we'll get there. We're really getting close.
Yes.
And that's why like I give the tech guys grief. They're getting there. I'm really hopeful we're getting there. AI will help us a lot. But
Yes.
this is that concept of information flows. You have this whole stack of data, and it really helps us like drive machines, drive CNCs, drive bulldozers. Like, oh, you imagine?
Yes.
And then also like make decisions, and like this is amazing time. We're almost there. Like, we're really close. Number 8, rules.
Ooh. Man.
Incentives. Yes, incentives,
Yeah.
punishments, constraints, like laws, regulations, policies. This is harder. Because
Yes.
like changing rules, like changing a law, like building code, hard, really hard,
Very hard.
right?
Yes.
But like some buildings need building codes to be, you need to get like a variance to get the building built.
Yes.
Right? So you got to leverage law, or sometimes we need acts of Congress to get projects going. Literally,
Yeah.
we've the project, the VA hospital in Aurora, Colorado, needed an act of Congress to get moved
Yes.
forward.
Yes.
So you sometimes need that rule of law, or rule of Congress, or sometimes we need policies changed within companies. Like,
Right.
that's why it's number 8, because it's a hard thing to change.
Right.
Changing rules can influence behavior. It can, right?
Yes.
Because,
But it's not easy.
often, right? But often that's the one we want to do. Like, why is this freaking red tape? Like, right?
Mhm.
Like, why don't you just get rid of this freaking red tape? Like, right? Like, oh, this is such a limiting factor. All these laws and rules,
Yeah.
right? I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to skip that one. Number 9, self-organization, the power to add, change, or evolve system structure.
Uh-oh.
Right,
I'm
this
hearing
is like-
decentralized.
Yeah, this is like you gotta create a gang,
Yep.
right? You gotta build
Yep.
teams,
Yep.
right? You gotta evolve. This is difficult,
Yes.
right?
Oh,
Because
yes.
if it's hard to change a rule, try to change your organization.
Yes.
Change yourself, like transform one self. Try to transform a group of people.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. Especially in
difficult.
that like self-organizing groups, because so many of us, maybe tied back to the learned helplessness, so many of us do not know how to function with autonomy. We want it, and when we get it, we don't know how to leverage it. and a self-organizing team is autonomous.
Yes. Self-organization can foster resilience and adaptability,
Yes.
right? And go the
Yep.
other way too.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Goals. Leveraging goals, the purpose or function of a system, like a mission statement,
Okay.
right? We're getting to number 10 is goals. This is 10 out of
Okay.
12. Changing goals can fundamentally alter systems behavior. It can.
100%.
Like you can change a system's entire behavior by changing the goal.
Yes.
Right? So if
Yep.
we were talking about that tension, like lowering the goal,
Yep.
you can change the entire system behavior. This is why, like, one person asked me one time, like, how can we change the safety behavior of this project? And I go, add 1 month to the schedule.
Holy yeah. And when they
And
say, oh,
they were like GTFO, right?
yeah,
But I
yeah,
was like, well, think about it. Like, just roll it around. Like, consider it. Like, it
yeah,
would eliminate rushing. It would
overtime,
eliminate,
yeah, all
right? Think
kinds.
about it. Like, just think about it. Just consider it. I'm like, don't think about it like on the surface. Just consider it, right?
Right. Yes.
It would change
Yes.
the goal.
Yep.
I wouldn't just add it because yeah, maybe it wouldn't change the goal. It would maybe add the wrong behavior, but just
Right.
consider it.
Yep.
11
Yep.
paradigm.
Paradigms. Yep. Oh yeah.
That's even bigger.
Yes.
That's a goal.
Oh man, you're talking about hard
Structures, rules,
mental
delays.
models.
This is
Yes.
like
Yes.
paradigms. A paradigm shift is a complete transformation.
Yes.
That is like, it is a mindset out of the system.
Yep. Yep.
And the number 12 is a transcending paradigm.
Oh, okay.
It's the power to transcend paradigm, like questioning fundamental assumptions or embracing new worldviews.
Mm.
If you don't
Yeah.
turn on the TV, if you think
Yeah.
about people being scared, I don't want to say that. That's not the right word. Like people challenging worldviews.
Yes.
It is. I mean, goes back for forever, as the story is as old as time. But the change, like to transition a complete paradigm. I get this every single day. My house, feet from my house. There was a skirmish in 1864, a Civil War skirmish.
Oh,
I can go see the ruins of it, feet from my house. So I get to see it every single day. There's a paradigm transcended.
right.
But I don't know if it did. In the
Uh,
United States,
right.
I don't think we've transcended. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. But like I can look at that every single day and be like, you know what? I can look at it and be like, this is a battle of Americans that happened, and it's feet from where I sleep every single day.
Yeah. Well, maybe another way to
So
look
I
at
don't
it.
want to talk anymore about that. But what do you think?
Yeah,
Those are the 12.
I love it. I love it. I'll add about the trend that your landmark, like where you live, is that battle is maybe evidence of how hard it is to shift paradigms.
Think about
Right?
how dug in people
Yes.
were
Yes.
to fight to the death
Yes.
of a paradigm. And
Yes.
what 1864? Like not that
Right.
generations ago.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, there's like I understand why it's down at 11 and 12 because there are just some things like you will never shift my paradigm about Eddie's tacos being the best damn tacos in the universe. Like, good luck trying. I invite you to try, but it's
You have
not
to
like
transcend. You have to
right.
change your entire worldview. Yeah.
Yes, you have one of them tacos, it will change your worldview. I promise.
So that's the idea. So that's why you go from, hey, we need to increase our profitability 20%, like right
Right.
numbers to transcending paradigm. So the leverage
Yeah.
it is a scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
yeah. So
Love it.
that's why I like. That's why you can pick and choose those. So I'll try to put these up here on your post, and then I think we'll leave it at that.
I like it. Then we will be back, not Thanksgiving week, the week after Thanksgiving. I think we'll be wrapping up what, chapter 8, getting into chapter 9.
Chapter 9. There's only 9, 10, 11, and then there's a reflection,
Yeah.
and then there's a coda.
Dakota.
I don't know. It goes to 17. Who am I kidding?
Right, right. But we'll probably be halfway next time we
18.
talk.
There's 18. So we have eclipsed the halfway point. So if you're on a down and back,
Yeah.
this would be the time where you turn around and start heading back to home.
We're
If
headed
you're on
back
a run.
home.
Yeah.
Just downhill from here.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Folks out there in the Omniverse, thank you. And we will see you in a couple of weeks. Later.
See ya. Have a good night.